She was the most twisted flower-dealing queen pin in the underworld. One moment, she's joking around with her customers. The next, she might toss them into a giant meat grinder for underperforming. After grinding them into a pile of minced meat, she'd carefully form it into meatballs, make a cheeseburger, then force another customer to eat it in front of her. If the customer could take a big bite without spitting it out, they could join her vast drug trafficking network. As such a twisted golden organization, White Powder Queenpin, because she owned the world's largest flower-dealing ring, she could only hide out in the deep mountains and forests to kill time. She also kept a tall boyfriend, and this big guy was named Charlie. He was lucky to escape death after being stunned by Kingsman Agent Eggsy with electricity in the previous movie, so he avoided having his head blown to pieces, but he lost an arm. The Queenpin installed a high-tech mechanical arm for her young boyfriend, which directly increased his combat power. He decided to meet his opponent, the Kingsman agent in England, named Eggsy, once again. Eggsy was probably the most enviable young man. Not only did he have a Swedish princess girlfriend, but he also owned a super cool Jaguar sports car as his means of transportation. Every day, he went to a tailor shop called Kingsman to work. This store was also one of the secret bases of the Kingsman, and Eggsy's colleague was also a girl that made people admire her. As he was happily preparing to go home after a day's work, he suddenly saw a familiar face. It turned out that Charlie had come for revenge, and he didn't come alone. There were 2 more cars on the road. Eggsy sensed something was wrong, so he threw Charlie into a taxi, then asked the driver to drive immediately. Eggsy and Charlie fought fiercely in the back of the car. He wanted to use the electric ring again, but this time it had no effect on Charlie at all, and Charlie's iron arm was extremely strong. Not only could it brace against the ground to break, but it could also block Eggsy's gun attacks. The 2 cars behind them also kept crashing into their black taxi. The 2 people in the car were still struggling for their lives. Eggsy popped out the hidden poison knife under his shoe, but Charlie dodged it. He broke the knife with his hand, but accidentally stabbed the driver in the neck. The driver fell. Eggsy immediately decisively hid behind the front seat. The taxi crashed straight into a lamppost. The huge inertia sent Charlie flying straight out, leaving only an iron arm still hanging in the car. Eggsy was unscathed. He defeated Charlie once again. But more enemy cars surrounded his smashed taxi. But this car was not an ordinary taxi. It was a car combined with the highest technology of the Kingsman. Eggsy pressed the switch. The car immediately switched to a new tire frame. Under his control, the entire car moved horizontally, breaking out of the encirclement. But the enemy's cars behind were not easy to deal with either. A Gatling gun protruded from the roof of the car and aimed straight at the black taxi, firing incessantly. Eggsy quickly asked Merlin, the bald instructor at headquarters, for permission to use a missile. Merlin refused, because they were now in the city center. Launching a missile would hurt innocent civilians. Helpless, Eggsy turned on crazy mode, driving as fast as he could to the park, and the enemy's artillery fire became even more intense. Seeing that he was about to reach a deserted area, Eggsy launched a fission warhead missile, which immediately destroyed 3 enemy vehicles. Eggsy didn't have time to be happy for long. Merlin told him that the police were about to arrive. Now he could only hide in the lake, but the taxi had been completely destroyed. There were no windows left. Poor Eggsy could only take a deep breath and drive the car into the lake. This taxi also had high technology. As soon as it reached the bottom of the lake, his tires turned into turbine engines. The entire car turned into a submarine and went deep into the bottom of the lake. And here the Kingsman also had a secret base. Eggsy almost drowned. He also had an important date tonight, but Merlin told him that now there were police everywhere outside. If he wanted to go home, he could only take another route, which was the stinking sewer. Eggsy almost threw up his late-night snack from the day before, but because of the important date tonight, he could only jump straight into this stinking sewer. What both he and Merlin didn't expect was that the robotic arm left in the car moved on its own. The robotic arm ran in front of the screen, inserted its finger, and began to infiltrate the internal system of Kingsman. All the information of the Kingsman agents was downloaded by it. A disaster was quickly approaching Kingsman. The important date that Eggsy mentioned turned out to be the first time having dinner with his girlfriend's parents. As a royal aristocrat, the emperor basically didn't take Eggsy seriously. He didn't understand why his daughter would fall in love with a poor young man from England. So he started deliberately making things difficult for him. He asked Eggsy a question, asking what his views were on the Indian financial market. Just when everyone thought Eggsy definitely wouldn't be able to answer, Eggsy unexpectedly calmly and fluently answered. This time, not only was the king pretending to be ignorant dumbfounded, but even his girlfriend was stunned. Next, no matter what kind of difficult questions the king asked, Eggsy always smiled and answered extremely clearly. It turned out that Eggsy had outside help. His beautiful female colleague Roxy was helping him find the answers to these questions remotely and then secretly telling him. When Eggsy was complacent, a missile suddenly hit the base where Roxy was, burying the headquarters of the Kingsman in an instant. Immediately afterwards, another missile hit Eggsy's house. Then the Kingsman shop was also destroyed. All Kingsman bases in England were destroyed in an instant. It turned out that this was all the work of the drug Queenpin Poppy. This way, no one would be able to keep an eye on her drug trafficking career anymore. Eggsy stood in front of the ruins of the tailor shop, so grieved that he couldn't say a word. In just one night, all of his colleagues had sacrificed. At this moment, a familiar figure suddenly appeared on the other side of the ruins. The visitor turned out to be Instructor Merlin. It turned out that he wasn't dead. Eggsy thought that he was the traitor, otherwise why was he still alive? But he had actually blamed Merlin wrongly. Merlin took out the robotic arm. He had investigated that it was Charlie's robotic arm that had infiltrated their system. Since there were only 2 Kingsman agents left, Merlin decided it was time to activate the Doomsday Protocol. The Doomsday Protocol was a crisis self-rescue program that the Kingsmen had established a long time ago. Merlin took Eggsy to a distillery under the guidance of the receptionist to wine tasting room number 3. He saw a familiar groove on the wall, so he took out a Kingsman badge and put it in the groove. The wall automatically opened, revealing a safe. Merlin was a little excited. He felt that what was inside would definitely help them solve the crisis. But unexpectedly, when he opened the cabinet and saw what was inside, he was also stunned. It turned out that what was in the cabinet was a bottle of bourbon whiskey. Eggsy and Merlin looked at each other, not understanding what the Kingsman predecessors meant. Since they were already here, the two of them spontaneously opened the wine and drank a glass together. Unexpectedly, this wine was so delicious, the two of them sat down and had a happy meal. Drinking and drinking, a big bottle of wine was gone just like that. Unexpectedly, a man with a masculine appearance like Merlin would cry when he got drunk. Eggsy comforted him, while snatching the bottle of wine. Then he suddenly noticed something strange. It turned out that on the inner surface of the wine bottle was printed the sentence, "This bottle of wine was produced in the Kentucky area," and above it was the Kingsman symbol. Eggsy already knew where the two of them had to go next. Eggsy and Merlin arrived at a place called the Statesman Distillery in Kentucky. They took advantage of others not paying attention and used a watch to unlock the fingerprint password of the wine cellar. When they thought that a barrel of wine was the door to the secret passage, preparing to smash it, a strong Western cowboy appeared in front of them. Because the two of them had secretly entered and also ruined the barrel of wine, the cowboy didn't agree with them and started fighting. But unexpectedly, both Eggsy and Merlin were not the cowboy's opponents, and the cowboy seemed to know a lot about the Kingsman agents. Eggsy and Merlin were tied up. The cowboy, after hearing the reason they came here, didn't even believe it. He thought these two idiots came here to rob people. Then the two of them saw a scene that shocked them. Hart, who was killed by the villain in the first movie, appeared healthy in front of the two of them. Seeing the two of them recognize the one-eyed man behind the glass wall, the cowboy drew his gun and pointed it at Harry, asking Eggsy to tell the real purpose of coming here. Otherwise, he would count down to 3 to eliminate the man behind the glass. At this tense moment, a woman rushed in and stopped them. It turned out that they had found in the warehouse the umbrella that the Kingsman agents had left here a long time ago, and on the umbrella was their logo. Now Eggsy understood that these people were actually the Kingsman's brother organization called Statesman in faraway America. The cowboy named Tequila and the woman named Ginger were their technical staff. The first thing that the two Eggsy did after being untied was to go to the next room. When he saw Harry, he was so excited that he wanted to give him a hug, but unexpectedly Harry panicked and dodged. In his eyes, Eggsy and Merlin were like strangers, completely unfamiliar. Ginger told the two of them the truth. It turned out that the day Harry was shot a year ago, Statesman agents had detected strong signal fluctuations near them. When they arrived there, they found Harry had died in front of the church. But as the most mysterious and powerful secret agent organization in America, saving someone who had their head blown apart wasn't difficult. Ginger used high-tech glue to bandage Harry's shot head, using nanobots and the spray glue to repair Harry's nerve tissue. Although Harry was saved, because the bullet had damaged the cerebrum, so Harry had lost his memory. Now he was no longer a polite but powerful Kingsman agent, but just a timid and shy uncle. Tequila took Eggsy to meet the leader of the Statesman organization. As a brother organization that didn't lack money, the leader was willing to help Eggsy's group deal with the enemy. And Eggsy had investigated that Charlie's ex-girlfriend would be participating in a concert in the near future. This was the only clue to find Charlie. The leader decided to send Tequila to assist Eggsy in his operation. Unexpectedly, blue streaks appeared on Tequila's face, even more frightening. They were getting more and more numerous. Helpless, the leader could only replace him with another high-level agent, codenamed Whiskey. Before leaving, Whiskey showed Eggsy the high technology of the Statesman agents. They handed him a mini condom, but this was to be worn on the finger. By pressing on the outer layer for 3 seconds, a comprehensive listening device could be released. Eggsy didn't understand where this could be used, but immediately afterwards he understood immediately. In the concert, they saw Charlie's ex-girlfriend. This was a woman with a hot figure. Whiskey wanted to step forward to be a model first, but unexpectedly the woman had no interest in a greasy uncle like him. But when facing a young man like Eggsy, her eyes lit up. Whiskey could only happily retreat. Just when Eggsy was having a lively conversation with the beauty, he suddenly saw that the girl next to her also had symptoms similar to Tequila, which were the blue rashes, and a large number of pictures of young people with such blue rash symptoms had also appeared online. Moreover, there were more and more, and Tequila had been in a coma in the hospital bed for a long time. In the evening, the beauty took Eggsy into her tent. At this time, the woman seemed to have lost all patience, wanting to do things that couldn't be described with Eggsy, but Eggsy hesitated a little. He used the classic excuse of going to the bathroom, then secretly called his girlfriend. It turned out that the silly Eggsy knew that he might do things that were sorry for his girlfriend soon, but because of his guilty conscience, he wanted to tell his girlfriend in advance. After all, this was a job requirement. But the inexperienced young man underestimated the jealousy of women. His girlfriend immediately hung up his phone. Eggsy, with a belly full of grievances, returned to the room. He also wanted to try another method to get information, but unexpectedly the beautiful woman frankly demanded too much. Eggsy was about to refuse when he suddenly saw the golden circle symbol behind her back. He had seen similar patterns on Charlie. Therefore, he immediately changed his mind. Eggsy secretly put the high-tech condom on his hand, so a tiny listening device infiltrated the woman's body. Eggsy successfully completed the mission. Afterwards, Eggsy immediately left the tent. When he called his girlfriend, he only received a signal that no one was answering. Heartbroken Eggsy returned to the Statesman agent headquarters. Unexpectedly, his teacher Harry was also preparing to leave. After becoming a normal person, he wanted to live his own life. Eggsy was extremely worried. He didn't want to lose anyone he loved anymore. But Harry, who had lost his memory, still shook hands and said goodbye to him. Eggsy was sad, so he went to the bar alone to drink to relieve his sorrow. He flipped through the intimate photos with his girlfriend. Suddenly a photo of the two hugging a small dog made him stop. He suddenly thought of a way to awaken Harry's memory. The next day, Eggsy hugged a puppy and appeared in front of Harry. Harry liked this dog very much, but unexpectedly Eggsy raised his TT. Harry was frightened and tightly hugged the little dog, retreating. It turned out that Kingsman agents had to undergo a test, which was that before officially becoming a special agent, they had to shoot the dog they raised, and the dog Eggsy brought was exactly the same as Harry's. Eggsy wanted to stimulate Harry in this way to make him remember everything before. Sure enough, Harry immediately remembered his dog, remembered when he was young when he did this test, remembered the moment he was shot to death by Valentine. He remembered that after firing the shot, the dog was fine. It turned out that the gun only contained blank bullets. He had raised his dog until it died of old age. Harry finally remembered everything. He even called out the name of his teammate's son, Eggsy. "Hello, Uncle Harry." Eggsy couldn't help but hug Harry tightly. He had finally found the man he considered his father. Harry put on his elegant suit again, wearing the glasses specially made for Kingsman agents. At this time, a drunkard came over to provoke him. He uttered crude words insulting Harry. Therefore, a scene very familiar to Harry appeared. Harry threw his beer at the guy, but this time it didn't hit the other party. Immediately afterwards, he was knocked down by a punch from the other party, completely losing his demeanor as in the previous movie. In the end, it still had to be local cowboy Whiskey to take action. After all, he was familiar with dealing with these Western drunkards. Whiskey's weapons were ropes and whips, things commonly seen in the West. He made the big men awkward. Meanwhile, Harry sitting next to him looked distressed. Merlin comforted him that maybe his brain hadn't fully recovered yet. Maybe it would be fine after a while. Whiskey on the other side had resolved all the drunkards. He also didn't forget to pose stylishly. At this time, the image of the drug queenpin Poppy suddenly appeared on the TV screen. Poppy declared to the entire United States that she had researched a virus, and this virus was hidden in her flour. Anyone who liked to use white powder would be infected with this virus. People who were sick would develop blue rashes. If they were left for a long time without an antidote, this person would sacrifice immediately. Immediately afterwards, Poppy made her request. She wanted the US government to legalize the use of white powder and erase all her crimes. If they agreed to her request, she would give the antidote. otherwise prepare for a large-scale population reduction. This news caused panic, because the number of people who liked to sniff flour in the United States was really too large. All the hospitals were packed. But the president, after watching this video, was happy. He hated those who used prohibited substances. He even thought this was the best opportunity to eliminate those hateful people from the earth. In the bottle of wine in the president's office was the Statesman agent's listening device. The agents felt that the president was crazy. After all, these were millions of lives. They had to prevent the tragedy from happening. And just at this moment, Ginger sent a message. She discovered that Charlie's ex-girlfriend Clara had contacted Charlie. It turned out that Clara had also been infected with the virus. Charlie told her to go to the ski resort in Italy, where the Golden Circle organization's factory was located. By then Charlie would give her the antidote. Therefore, the Statesman leader sent some people to verify the situation. 3 people went to the foot of the snow mountain. Whiskey, after seeing Harry's unreliable image in the bar last time, decided to let him stay here to assist, and he and Eggsy would go up the mountain to see what was going on. Harry then went to the cable car control room. He took down the controller and controlled the operation of the cable car. At this time, Eggsy and Whiskey arrived at the building on the top of the snow mountain. They discovered that this place was full of antidotes. Eggsy pretended to be a customer and went to the front desk. While chatting with the counter staff, he learned the news that a customer was coming from Singapore. At this time, Charlie had recognized Eggsy, quickly stole a bottle of antidote, and ran away with Whiskey. The two hurriedly ran into the cable car. Eggsy told Harry to quickly start the cable car. And at this time, Charlie also chased out. Seeing that Eggsy was already in the cable car, he not only wasn't anxious, but also revealed a cunning smile. It turned out that he had regained control of the cable car system, causing the cable car to start accelerating in circles. The cable car was like a top, spinning faster and faster. Both Eggsy and Whiskey were pushed against the glass wall by the strong force and couldn't move. Seeing Eggsy being spun dizzy, the veteran agent Whiskey pulled out a rope. It turned out that his rope also had a laser. He cut a large hole in the glass wall. The laser rope stretched out and cut off a cable car wire. The cable car finally escaped control, but it fell from a high place. The cable car fell down the snow slope like a giant ball, heading straight down the mountain. However, in the middle of the hillside was a nursing home. Many elderly people were sitting on the balcony relaxing and enjoying the snow scenery. Seeing that they were about to send the old people to meet God, Eggsy suddenly had an idea. He pulled open Whiskey's parachute. The cable car crashed into the hotel amidst the echoing screams. And finally the cable car stopped firmly in front of the balcony of the old people, finally breathing a sigh of relief. Harry reunited with Eggsy and everyone in a wooden cabin at the foot of the mountain. But right behind him were countless enemies chasing after him. When he saw the enemy, Whiskey immediately shouted for the two of them to lie down, but he accidentally broke the bottle of antidote in Eggsy's hand. The enemy fired bullets like crazy towards the wooden house. While the enemy was changing bullets, Whiskey rushed out to deal with them. Eggsy also wanted to go out to help, but was stopped by Harry. It turned out that Harry suspected Whiskey might be the traitor. He thought Whiskey had deliberately spilled the antidote. However, Eggsy thought that Harry hadn't fully recovered yet. After all, Whiskey was outside dealing with the enemy at this time. When his gun ran out of bullets, he immediately pulled out the laser rope and cut the last one in half. Unexpectedly, just as he had finished dealing with a group of enemies, a car carrying soldiers appeared. Whiskey quickly ran back to the wooden cabin. Seeing the enemies walking down one after another, Eggsy and Whiskey were worried. Whiskey saw Harry standing blankly without moving, so he urged him to give him a weapon. Unexpectedly, Harry pointed his weapon at Whiskey's head. And at this time, the enemy outside had begun to attack them. The wooden cabin was quickly shot into a honeycomb. Eggsy felt extremely uncomfortable, not understanding why Harry was eliminating his teammates in such an emergency. Harry insisted that Whiskey was the traitor. Then he calmly took out a bottle of perfume from his pocket, pressed the button, and threw it out of the cabin, and then the gunfire also stopped. When Eggsy looked out, he found that everyone had turned into plastic statues. Although he had resolved the emergency, Eggsy still felt angry. He immediately wrapped the special tape of the Statesman organization around Whiskey's head, hoping to save him. Afterwards, Eggsy called Statesman headquarters to inform Ginger and the others about Whiskey's serious condition. But in the end, he didn't say that it was Harry who did it. After all, Harry was still his teacher. Eggsy hoped that headquarters would send more people, so that they could bring back more antidote from the top of the snow mountain. But Charlie wouldn't let that happen as Eggsy wished. When sitting on the helicopter flying away, he pressed a button, causing the entire factory to explode into dust. Although there was no antidote, Eggsy had informed Ginger and the others that there was a Golden Circle organization customer in Singapore. Perhaps they could find useful information. Indeed, Ginger and Merlin had found the location of the Queen Pin Poppy through this customer in Singapore. It turned out to be in a forest hidden in the deep mountains of Cambodia. At the same time, the situation in the United States had become extremely bad. As time passed, more and more people developed blue rashes. To ensure safety and manage the infected people, the United States locked them up like livestock in iron cages. Not only that, Eggsy also received a call from his girlfriend. When he thought that she was no longer angry, unexpectedly her face had developed blue rashes and her spirit was also unstable. Eggsy felt extremely worried. He had to immediately fly to Cambodia to find the antidote to save his girlfriend. On the plane, Harry saw that Eggsy looked sad, so he made him a martini. Harry told Eggsy that he was actually very jealous of him because he had someone to care about, while throughout his life he had no one to love. He felt that this kid he had raised had lived a worthwhile life, so he would help Eggsy save the princess. Hearing Harry say this, Eggsy's mood improved a little. At this time, Merlin informed the two that it was time to choose the right equipment. This time Merlin, who always supported from behind, also wore a beautifully designed suit. He was determined to become an agent together with Eggsy to save the world. Although the equipment for the Kingsman agents was temporarily unavailable, the good things of the Statesman agents were not few. A seemingly ordinary baseball bat, when pressing a button, would turn into a mine detector, and the small baseball was a grenade with extremely strong power. Meanwhile, Whiskey lying in the hospital bed had woken up. When Whiskey heard that Eggsy and Harry had flown to Cambodia, his anger flared up. He immediately drove a supersonic fighter jet and chased after them. A big battle was about to begin. The three of Eggsy carefully carried the mine detector and sneaked through the tropical rainforest. The three of them finally managed to get close to the main gate, but unexpectedly Eggsy suddenly stopped. It turned out that he had stepped on a mine. Merlin told him not to move. Then he took out a high-tech product. This kind of spray could freeze the detonation mechanism of the mine. However, the freezing time was limited. Then, Merlin pushed Eggsy away, but unfortunately, he also stepped on another mine, and the freezing effect had also ended. Eggsy wanted to stay and save Merlin, but Merlin told them to quickly complete the mission, not to delay. Eggsy had no other choice, so he had to leave with Harry. The base gate was heavily guarded. Outside were gunmen guarding. Just at this moment, someone suddenly sang loudly. This attracted the attention of the gunman. It turned out that Merlin was deliberately singing to attract the enemy. Then he looked at his teammates for the last time and released his foot. Merlin had sacrificed. Eggsy and Harry, carrying anger and grief, charged forward. The two launched a baseball bat strike, then they rushed into the base. Harry held his umbrella to shield himself from enemy bullets. Eggsy took out his briefcase. It was actually a heavy machine gun. It could not only fire bullets, but also launch missiles. The explosion caused the enemy to fall in droves. At this time, the enemy's reinforcements poured in even more. Eggsy opened his briefcase. It immediately turned into a shield blocking the hail of bullets, and Harry used his umbrella to snatch the enemy's gun. In just a moment, the two had eliminated all the enemies in sight. The two rushed into the restaurant. Eggsy saw a man carrying a suitcase trying to run away. It turned out that the suitcase was the controller to release the antidote. Eggsy quickly chased after him, leaving Harry to deal with Poppy. Although Poppy didn't have strength, she had two ferocious and cruel robot dogs. Harry tried to block its attack with his umbrella, but unexpectedly the robot dog's claws were very sharp. Harry saw that he couldn't fight them, so he rushed out of the restaurant. He ran to the bowling alley next door, but unexpectedly the robot dog still followed closely behind. When it was about to tear Harry apart, a chubby man suddenly appeared in front of the robot dog. It turned out to be the British musical legend Elton John. He was the one who sang the famous theme song in the Disney animated film The Lion King. It turned out that the Queen Pin Poppy was a fan of his, so she had captured Elton John and had him sing for her every day. So all these robot dogs knew him. As soon as they saw him, they would stop attacking. Harry seized the opportunity to pick up a bowling ball and smash it continuously at the robot dog, finally taking it down. On the other side, Charlie's robotic arm was not only incomparably powerful, but also could launch grappling hooks to wrap around Eggsy. The two began the final showdown. Charlie lifted Eggsy up like lifting a chick, then slammed him hard on the ground. Then he threw Eggsy into the wall like throwing a sack of sand. When Charlie thought that he had won, Eggsy suddenly smiled strangely. It turned out that just now when Eggsy got close, he had attached his watch to his robotic arm. The robotic arm completely didn't listen to Charlie's command. Eggsy ordered the robotic arm to launch a grappling hook. Charlie endured the pain and separated himself from the robotic arm and jumped down. Seeing that Charlie was still sticking to him like a leech, Eggsy didn't want to play unfairly. The robotic arm, which had supported Charlie, was no longer Eggsy's opponent, and he was finally pinned down by Eggsy. Eggsy remembered his former colleagues who were harmed by him, along with his most beloved dog, as well as to avenge Merlin, who had just sacrificed. This time he decided not to show any mercy. Eggsy and Harry were reunited. They walked into the restaurant together to face the final boss. Eggsy opened the system platform and asked Poppy to enter the password, but how could she follow his words? Eggsy and Harry injecting her with an injection. It turned out that they had injected the virus that Poppy had researched into her body and also increased the dosage, causing the effects to take place faster. Sure enough, blue rashes quickly appeared on Poppy's face. When Eggsy asked for the password again, Poppy had started to lose her mind, finally murmuring vaguely and saying the password. Finally, the drug queen pin slowly collapsed, ending her sinful life. When Harry was preparing to enter the password, a noose suddenly tightened around his neck. It turned out that whiskey had arrived. Eggsy felt very puzzled. The queen pin had sacrificed, so why was this person still stopping them? Who was he working for? Whiskey finally said the real reason. It turned out that more than 10 years ago, his newly pregnant wife was brutally murdered by a flower addict, so from then on he hated those who liked to sniff that substance. He wanted all the flower addicts in the world to disappear, and now was the best opportunity, so he had to stop Eggsy and Harry from sending the antidote. When Whiskey smugly thought that he was in control, Eggsy suddenly pressed the bright button on his watch. Harry also took the opportunity to escape from the noose. The two British agents began to fight an American agent. Eggsy and Harry coordinated with each other in a tacit way, destroying all the weapons that Whiskey used. The three fought from the main hall to the bar. Eggsy seized the opportunity to turn on the switch of the giant meat grinder. Under Harry's support, the two knocked Whiskey into the air and stuffed him into the meat grinder. Finally, they had resolved all the enemies. Eggsy entered the password. Then tens of thousands of drones carrying the antidote flew to all parts of the world. All those who were infected were saved. Everyone was released from the iron cages and began a new life. After this event, Eggsy and Harry received all the resources of the Statesman organization, returning to England to rebuild the Kingsman organization. They also welcomed a new colleague, handsome and familiar. The legend of the Kingsman's secret agents will continue.